Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the stars bend around his ship. The quantum fold drive hummed beneath his feet like a living thing. After 300 years of dreaming about faster-than-light travel, humans had finally done it. Jake felt proud as he looked at his crew working at their stations. They were the first humans to leave their home solar system and travel to another star. The ship dropped out of fold space near a yellow star much like their own sun. Jake ordered his science officer to start scanning for planets. Within hours, they found something amazing. 3 worlds in this system showed signs of life. Not just simple life like bacteria, but complex civilizations with cities and technology. Jake made the decision that would change human history forever. He ordered his communications officer to send a peaceful greeting message toward the largest planet. The message was simple. It said that humans came in peace and wanted to meet their neighbors in the galaxy. The response came faster than anyone expected. A massive ship appeared near the New Horizon without any warning. It was 10 times larger than the human vessel and shaped like a crystal. Strange blue lights ran along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful and terrifying at the same time. A voice spoke directly into the minds of every human on the ship. The voice was cold and felt ancient beyond measure. It said that the newcomers would follow their ship to the council chambers. Resistance would result in immediate destruction. Jake looked at his crew and saw fear in their eyes, but also excitement. They were about to meet alien life for the first time. The journey took 3 days. The alien ship led them through space to a massive station that floated between 2 dead moons. The station was larger than any human city. Thousands of different ships docked at its ports. Jake realized that humans were not alone in the universe, and they were very small compared to what existed out here. The aliens brought Jake and his diplomatic team aboard their station. The first thing Jake noticed was how clean everything looked. The walls were white and smooth like glass. The air smelled like flowers, but with a chemical taste that made his nose burn. Tall creatures in flowing robes guided them through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. They entered a vast chamber with a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. 12 different alien species sat on platforms that rose from the floor, like pillars. Each species looked completely different from the others. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few seemed to be made of living metal. But they all shared the same look in their eyes. They looked down at the humans like adults looking at small children. The tallest alien stepped forward. Its skin was pale blue and its head was shaped like a teardrop. It wore robes made of material that seemed to shift colors in the light. When it spoke, its voice filled the chamber without echoing. The alien introduced itself as Ambassador HFY of the Valdorian High Council. It explained that the Galactic Council had ruled this part of space for over 10,000 years. 12 species worked together to maintain peace and order across hundreds of worlds. Every intelligent race that developed space travel eventually joined the council. Now it was humanity's turn. HFY explained the process with the patience of someone who had given this speech many times before. Humanity would surrender all advanced technology to council oversight. Human scientists would work under council supervision to ensure they did not develop dangerous weapons. All human space travel would require council approval and escort ships. 20% of Earth's population would relocate to council worlds to work on important projects. In exchange, humanity would receive protection from the dangerous creatures that lived in deep space. The council would share basic technology to help humans improve their lives. Most importantly, humanity would join the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. Jake felt his stomach turn cold as he listened to the terms. This was not a negotiation or a treaty between equals. This was a surrender. The aliens expected humanity to give up their freedom in exchange for safety and scraps of technology. Ambassador HFY seemed to notice Jake's expression. The alien explained that every species had the same reaction when they first heard the terms. Fear and pride made them want to resist, but wisdom and survival made them accept. The council had never failed to bring a new species into their system. Violence was unnecessary when the alternative was complete destruction. The alien touched a device on its wrist and the chamber filled with images. Jake watched in horror as entire planets burned under Council weapons. Cities turned to glass. Populations that had once numbered in the billions reduced to scattered survivors hiding in caves. These were the species that had chosen to resist the Council's generous offer. Kethvar assured Jake that such extreme measures were rarely necessary. Most species were intelligent enough to accept the Council's terms without forcing a demonstration of their military power. Surely humanity would be equally wise. Jake was given a small device that would allow him to communicate across any distance instantly. He was to return to Earth and present the Council's terms to his government. Humanity had 30 standard galactic days to provide their answer. The Council would send a fleet to Earth to receive humanity's formal surrender and begin the integration process. As Jake and his team were escorted back to their ship, he noticed something that the aliens probably did not expect him to see. In the docking bays and corridors, he saw members of the 12 Council species working together, but not as equals. The Valdorians gave orders and the others obeyed. Even within the Council itself, there was a hierarchy with some species serving others. The trip back to Earth felt like the longest journey of Jake's life. His crew was quiet and thoughtful. They had left home as explorers and heroes. They were returning as messengers bearing news of humanity's coming enslavement. Jake spent the time studying everything his ship's sensors had recorded about Council technology and society. When the New Horizon reached Earth, Jake found himself facing the most important briefing in human history. President Lisa Carter listened to his report with growing alarm. The Joint Chiefs of Staff asked detailed questions about Council military capabilities. Scientists wanted to know everything about their technology, but the question that hung over every meeting was simple. Would humanity accept the Council's terms and surrender their freedom, or would they choose to fight against impossible odds for the right to remain free? President Lisa Carter stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Government and delivered words that would echo through history. Humanity would not bow to the Galactic Council. They would not surrender their freedom or their people. The vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth agreed to stand together against the alien threat. The decision sent shockwaves through every human settlement in the solar system. Within hours, scientists, engineers, and military leaders were working around the clock to prepare for war. They had 30 days to find a way to fight an enemy that had conquered the galaxy for 10,000 years. Chief Engineer Tony Blake received orders to report to the Luna Research Station immediately. Tony had designed the quantum fold drives that made human space travel possible. Now he faced an even greater challenge. He had to find a way to turn human technology into weapons that could match the Council's advanced systems. Tony's first break came when he examined the recordings from Jake Morrison's ship. The Council vessels used energy signatures that human sensors could detect and track. More importantly, their technology followed patterns that seemed familiar. Tony realized that the aliens were using very old designs that had not changed in centuries. Dr. Alex Chen joined Tony's team 3 days after the president's announcement. Alex was humanity's leading expert on quantum mechanics and space-time manipulation. She brought with her the research notes from every major university on Earth. Human scientists had been studying these problems for decades without knowing they would need the answers to save their species. The first major discovery came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Ben Taylor was a demolitions expert who had served in the asteroid mining conflicts. Ben noticed that Council ship hulls used a crystalline structure, similar to materials humans mined in the outer solar system. He suggested that human mining charges might be more effective against Council ships than anyone expected. Tony and Alex tested Ben's theory in secret facilities hidden throughout the solar system. They found that human explosives could indeed penetrate Council shielding, but only if delivered at exactly the right frequency and timing. The aliens had designed their defenses to stop energy weapons and plasma cannons. They had not considered the crude but effective chemical explosives that humans preferred. While the scientists worked on weapons, Admiral Kate Phillips prepared Earth's military forces for the coming war. Kate had spent 20 years studying military history and tactics. She knew that smaller forces could defeat larger ones if they used the right strategies. The key was to avoid fighting the enemy's strengths and attack their weaknesses instead. Kate realized that the Council expected their enemies to fight like civilized galactic citizens. They expected formal battles with clear rules and predictable outcomes. But humans had learned warfare on a planet where survival meant adapting quickly to changing conditions. Human military doctrine emphasized flexibility, creativity, and independent thinking at every level. The Admiral began training programs that would have seemed insane to Council military leaders. She taught ship captains to ignore orders when battlefield conditions changed. She encouraged soldiers to improvise weapons from whatever materials they could find. Most importantly, she trained her forces to keep fighting even when their command structure was destroyed. Meanwhile, Dr. Chen made a breakthrough that changed everything. She discovered that human quantum fold technology was actually more advanced than anything the Council used. The aliens relied on fixed jump points between star systems. Their ships could only travel along established routes that they had used. For thousands of years, human ships could fold space anywhere and appear at any location without warning. This gave humanity a massive tactical advantage that the Council did not even know existed. Alex worked with Tony to modify human ships for hit-and-run attacks that would be impossible for Council forces to predict or counter. The Luna Research Station became the center of humanity's desperate preparation efforts. Scientists from every nation worked together without regard for old political boundaries. Engineers shared their most secret designs. Military leaders planned operations that would have been classified above top secret just weeks before. Captain Jake Morrison returned to Luna Station with disturbing news from the outer colonies. Council scout ships had been spotted near human settlements throughout the solar system. The aliens were mapping human defenses and studying their technology. The 30-day deadline was approaching fast. Tony Blake presented his team's first prototype weapons to Admiral Phillips and President Carter. The devices looked primitive compared to Council technology, but testing showed they could disable alien ships with a single hit. The weapons used principles that the Council had never encountered before. Human creativity and determination had found gaps in defenses that had protected the aliens for millennia. Dr. Chen demonstrated her portable jump gate technology to the military leadership. The device could transport small groups of soldiers instantly across vast distances. More importantly, it could evacuate human colonies before Council forces arrived to destroy them. The aliens expected to find helpless populations waiting for conquest. Instead, they would find empty worlds and carefully planned traps. Admiral Phillips approved the deployment of humanity's new weapons and tactics to defense forces throughout the solar system. Ship captains received sealed orders that they would open only when Council forces arrived. Colony governors began the difficult process of evacuating civilian populations to hidden bases that the aliens could not detect. The most important change was in how humans thought about the coming war. Instead of seeing themselves as helpless victims facing impossible odds, they began to understand that they had advantages the Council could not match. Human technology was different, not inferior. Human tactics were chaotic, not weak. Human determination was absolute, not foolish. President Carter made a final broadcast to all human settlements as the 30-day deadline approached. She reminded her people that they were fighting not just for survival, but for the right of all intelligent species to remain free. The Council had ruled through fear and overwhelming force for 10,000 years. It was time for that age of oppression to end. Jake Morrison prepared to take the New Horizon back to Council space with humanity's answer to their ultimatum. The message was simple and clear. Humanity rejected the Council's terms completely. Earth would remain free and independent. Any attempt to force human submission would be met with total resistance. As Jake's ship prepared to depart, he looked back at Earth and the Luna Station where so many brilliant people had worked miracles. In just 30 days, the planet looked peaceful and beautiful, but he knew that hidden throughout the solar system were weapons and warriors ready to fight for humanity's freedom. The Council had made a fatal mistake when they gave humanity time to prepare. They had assumed that 30 days was barely enough time for any species to accept their fate. They had not considered that humans might use those 30 days to prepare for war instead of surrender. High Commander Zeth Null received humanity's rejection of the Council's terms with cold fury that surprised even his own officers. In 10,000 years of galactic conquest, No species had ever been foolish enough to refuse the Council's generous offer of protection and guidance. The humans would learn the price of defying the natural order of the galaxy. Zeth Null was a Valdorian military leader who had crushed 17 rebellions during his long career. His pale blue skin bore the ritual scars that marked him as a veteran of countless battles. His ship, the Eternal Dominion, was the most powerful vessel in the Council fleet. It had reduced entire civilizations to ash and glass. The High Commander assembled the largest invasion force in Council history. Over 3,000 ships from all 12 member species joined the Armada, planet crackers that could split worlds in half, gravity bombs that could collapse stars, mind control parasites that could break the will of entire populations. Every weapon that had brought the galaxy to its knees was aimed at the small blue world called Earth. Ambassador Kethvar accompanied the fleet as the Council's official representative. The Valdorian diplomat had negotiated the surrender of hundreds of species. He expected the humans to change their minds when they saw the true power of the Council. Fear was a universal language that every intelligent race understood perfectly. War. Invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system in perfect formation. Zeth Null smiled with satisfaction as his sensors detected the primitive human settlements scattered throughout their star system. Mars colonies, asteroid mining stations, orbital platforms around the gas giants, all of them defenseless against Council technology. The High Commander sent his ultimatum directly to Earth. Humanity had one final chance to surrender before the fleet began its work. Any further resistance would result in the complete destruction of human civilization. Not even bacteria would survive on their worlds when the Council finished its demonstration. President Lisa Carter's response came within an hour. The humans not only refused to surrender, but declared their intention to fight for the freedom of all oppressed species in the galaxy. Zeth Null laughed at the absurdity of such claims. These primitive creatures thought they could challenge an empire that spanned 1,000 star systems. The invasion began with surgical strikes against human military installations. Council ships moved through the outer solar system like a plague, destroying everything in their path. The asteroid mining stations disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. Mars colonies went silent as gravitational weapons crushed them beneath the planet's own weight. But something was wrong. Zeth Null's forces found the human settlement strangely empty. Where they expected to capture millions of terrified civilians, they found only abandoned cities and empty bases. The humans had somehow evacuated their entire population without the Council fleet detecting any large-scale movement. Worse, the human military was fighting in ways that made no tactical sense. Small groups of ships appeared without warning, attacked Council vessels with primitive but effective weapons, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Captain Jake Morrison led one of these hit-and-run attacks against a Council supply convoy near Jupiter. His modified ship, New Horizon, used its quantum fold drive to appear directly behind the alien vessels. Tony Blake's experimental weapons tore through Council shields like they were made of paper. Before the aliens could respond, the human ship had vanished again. Admiral Kate Phillips coordinated the defense from a hidden command center deep beneath Earth's surface. Her strategy was simple, but effective. Never fight the Council's main force directly. Always attack their weakest points. Keep them guessing where the next strike would come from. Most importantly, make them pay for every inch of space they occupied. The psychological warfare was just as important as the physical battles. Human ships broadcast messages to Council crews in their own languages. The messages told the truth about how their species had been conquered and enslaved by the Valdorians. Many Council soldiers had never heard these stories before. Doubt began to spread through the ranks of the invasion force. Dr. Alex Chen's portable jump gates proved to be the key to human survival. Entire colonies vanished overnight, reappearing in hidden bases that the Council could not locate. Civilians found themselves living in underground cities and asteroid bunkers that their government had prepared in secret during the 30 days of preparation. High Commander Zeth Null grew increasingly frustrated as his invasion bogged down in guerrilla warfare. His ships controlled the space around every major planet, but the humans refused to acknowledge their defeat. They kept fighting from hidden bases and mobile platforms that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The Council decided to make an example that would break human resistance once and for all. They deployed the mind control parasites against Earth's remaining population centers. The tiny organisms could burrow into a human brain and control their thoughts and actions. No species had ever resisted their influence for more than a few hours, but the humans had prepared for this attack too. Dr. Chen and her team had developed neural shields that protected human minds from alien intrusion. The parasites found themselves unable to penetrate the quantum barriers that surrounded every human brain. For the first time in their history, the Council's most feared weapon had failed completely. Lieutenant Ben Taylor led a desperate mission to destroy the parasite deployment, ships before they could adapt to human defenses. His team used modified mining charges to breach the alien hulls from inside. The explosions tore through 3 Council vessels in seconds, sending millions of parasites into the vacuum of space where they died instantly. Zeth Null realized that he was facing something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans were not just resisting Council authority. They were actually winning battles against superior forces through tactics and technology that no civilized species would ever consider using. Their chaotic, individualistic nature made them impossible to predict or counter. The siege of Earth entered its 3rd month with no end in sight. Council forces held every major population center, but human resistance continued to grow stronger. Weapons caches hidden throughout the solar system supplied an endless stream of fighters. Underground factories produced new ships and equipment faster than the aliens could destroy them. Ambassador Kethvar reported to the Council chambers that the human campaign was becoming a serious threat to galactic stability. Other conquered species were beginning to ask questions about human resistance. Some were even requesting permission to send aid to the embattled humans. The foundation of Council authority was starting to crack. High Commander Zeth Null received orders to end the human rebellion by any means necessary. The Council authorized the use of planet cracker weapons against Earth itself. If humanity would not surrender, their world would be destroyed as a warning to every other species in the galaxy. The age of human defiance would end in nuclear fire. But as Zeth Null prepared for the final assault, his sensors detected something that chilled his blood. Human ships were appearing throughout Council space, attacking installations hundreds of light years from Earth. Somehow the desperate defenders had become the attackers. The prey had become the hunters. Captain Morrison's voice echoed across every Council communication channel as human forces struck at the heart of the Galactic Empire. The message was simple, but devastating. Humanity would never surrender, never submit, and never stop fighting until every species in the galaxy was free from Council oppression. The war was no longer just about Earth's survival. It had become a revolution that would reshape the entire galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of an ancient alien city on a dead world at the edge of Council space. His stealth ship had brought him here following intercepted communications about archaeological sites that the Council kept strictly forbidden. What he found changed everything humanity thought they knew about their galactic enemies. The city was older than Council civilization by thousands of years. The architecture was elegant and flowing, completely different from the rigid, geometric structures that Council species preferred. Most importantly, the technology embedded in the walls and foundations was far more advanced than anything the Council had ever displayed. Jake's science team worked carefully to extract data from the ancient computers. What they discovered sent shockwaves through the human resistance. The Galactic Council was not the original ruler of this part of space. 10,000 years ago, they had conquered and absorbed a species called the Builders, who had created most of the technology the Council claimed as their own. Dr. Alex Chen studied the Builder records with growing excitement. These ancient aliens had developed quantum manipulation techniques that made human fold drives look primitive. They had created artificial intelligences that could predict the outcome of battles before they began. Most importantly, they had hidden weapons and defense systems throughout their former territory. The Builders had known they were losing the war against the Council's overwhelming numbers. In their final years, they had scattered their most advanced technology across hundreds of worlds, waiting for a species worthy of using it against their conquerors. The humans had found the first cache of builder weapons, and the implications were staggering. Tony Blake led the team that reverse-engineered the builder technology. The ancient devices responded to human neural patterns in ways they never had for council species. It was as if the builders had designed their systems specifically for minds that thought like humans, creative, chaotic, and willing to take enormous risks to achieve their goals. The first builder weapon that humans successfully activated was a gravitational manipulator that could tear apart council ships from the inside. The device worked by creating tiny black holes within enemy hulls that lasted just long enough to cause catastrophic damage. Council shields and armor provided no protection against attacks that came from within their own vessels. Admiral Kate Phillips received the builder technology reports while coordinating resistance efforts from her hidden command center. She realized immediately that these ancient weapons could turn the tide of the war. But first, the humans needed to find more builder sites and convince other species to join their rebellion against council rule. The key breakthrough came when Dr. Chen discovered builder communication networks that still functioned after 10,000 years. The ancient aliens had created quantum transmitters that could send messages instantly across the entire galaxy. More importantly, these transmitters could reach species that the Council had conquered and oppressed for millennia. Jake Morrison volunteered to lead the most dangerous mission in human history. He would take a small fleet of modified ships into the heart of Council space to make contact with enslaved species and share builder technology with potential allies. The mission had almost no chance of success, but it was humanity's only hope of avoiding complete extinction. The human stealth fleet included ships commanded by some of their best officers. Captain Maria Santos led a vessel crewed entirely by engineers who could adapt builder technology in real time. Commander Ryan Bell commanded a ship full of pilots who specialized in impossible maneuvers that Council forces could never predict. Lieutenant Ben Taylor brought a team of soldiers trained in boarding actions and sabotage operations. Their first contact was with a species called the Cathara, reptilian beings who had been enslaved by the Council for over 3,000 years. The Cathara leaders met secretly with Jake's team on a mining world where Council oversight was minimal. When the humans demonstrated builder weapons and offered to share the technology, the Cathara agreed to join the rebellion immediately. TDI alliance spread quickly through underground networks that the Council had never suspected existed. The Nexari, a race of insect-like creatures who worked in Council factories, used their access to industrial facilities to sabotage war production. The Throkan, massive beings who served as Council laborers, began refusing orders and protecting human operatives from capture. Each species brought unique capabilities to the growing rebellion. The Zephyrians could fly through space without ships, making them perfect scouts and messengers. The Crystalline Collective could interface directly with builder technology, allowing them to activate ancient weapons that had been dormant for millennia. The silicon-based Archaeons could survive in environments that would kill organic beings, giving them access to builder sites in asteroid fields and dead planets. High Commander Zeth Knoll found his empire crumbling as rebellion spread through dozens of star systems. His forces were designed to fight conventional wars against organized militaries. They had no experience dealing with guerrilla campaigns conducted by multiple species using incomprehensible technology. Worse, his own troops were beginning to question their loyalty to the Council. The turning point came when builder artificial intelligences began activating throughout Council space. These ancient computer minds had been waiting 10,000 years for species capable of overthrowing their conquerors. They provided tactical information, activated hidden weapons, and most importantly, revealed the location of the Council's greatest weakness. Dr. Chen made contact with the primary builder, intelligence, a vast computer network that existed in quantum space rather than physical reality. The AI explained that the Council had built their empire on stolen technology they barely understood. Their most powerful weapons and defenses were actually builder creations that could be shut down remotely if the right access codes were used. Jake, Morrison led a combined fleet of human and alien ships toward the Council's capital system for the final confrontation. The fleet included vessels from 15 different species, all united by their hatred of Council oppression and their hope for freedom. It was the largest rebellion the galaxy had seen in 10,000 years. Admiral Phillips coordinated the attack from Earth, which had finally been liberated from Council occupation. Human forces had used builder weapons to drive the aliens from their home system in a series of brilliant campaigns that lasted only weeks. The planet that had seemed doomed just months before had become the center of galactic revolution. The rebel fleet used builder jump technology to appear directly in the Council's home system without warning. Valdoris Prime, the capital world, that had ruled the galaxy for millennia, suddenly found itself under attack by forces using weapons and tactics that their military had never encountered before. Captain, Morrison broadcast a message to every inhabited world in Council space as the final battle began. He announced that the age of galactic oppression was ending. The Council's stolen empire would fall, and every species would have the chance to determine their own destiny. The Builder's dream of freedom was finally being realized by the children of a small blue world that had refused to surrender. The battle for Valdoris Prime would determine the fate of every intelligent species in the galaxy. But for the first time since the war began, humanity and their allies were fighting with the certainty that victory was possible. The Council's 10,000-year reign of terror was about to end in the flames of their own burning capital. The final battle for Valdoris Prime began with a sight that no living being had ever witnessed. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different species dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation around the Council's capital world. The rebellion, that had started with humanity's refusal to surrender, had grown into a galactic revolution that would reshape the universe. Admiral Kate Phillips watched the battle unfold from the bridge of her flagship, the newly constructed vessel called Liberty's Dawn. The ship was built using a combination of human engineering and builder technology that created something entirely new. It was fast enough to outrun any Council vessel, tough enough to survive their most powerful weapons, and armed with systems that could disable entire fleets. Captain Jake Morrison led the first wave of attacks against the orbital defense platforms that protected Valdoris Prime. His ship, the New Horizon, had been upgraded with builder quantum processors that allowed it to predict and counter Council defensive patterns. The ancient alien weapons responded to human creativity in ways that amazed even their original creators. The Council's defensive fleet was the largest and most powerful military force in galactic history. 3,000 ships equipped with planet crackers, gravity bombs, and weapons that could ignite the atmosphere of entire worlds. High Commander Zeth Newell had gathered every available vessel to protect the heart of the Empire that had ruled for 10 millennia. But the rebel fleet fought with tactics that made traditional military doctrine useless. Captain Maria Santos led her engineering crews in real-time modifications to their weapon systems during the middle of combat. Her ships could change their capabilities so quickly that Council forces never knew what they were facing until it was too late. Commander Ryan Bell pushed his pilots to perform maneuvers that should have been impossible. His fighters wove through Council formations like dancers, striking critical targets and vanishing before return fire could reach them. The rigid discipline that had made Council forces so effective for thousands of years became a weakness when facing opponents who refused to follow any predictable pattern. The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Ben Taylor led a boarding action against the Council's primary command ship. His team used builder teleportation technology to appear directly inside the enemy vessel's bridge. The hand-to-hand combat that followed was brief but decisive. Council officers had not fought personal battles in centuries, while Ben's soldiers had trained for exactly this kind of close-quarters fighting. Dr. Alex Chen activated the builder override codes from her position aboard Admiral Phillips's flagship. Throughout the Council fleet, ancient technology began shutting down systems that the aliens had relied on for their entire civilization. Ships lost power, weapons failed to fire, and defensive shields collapsed as the stolen builder technology recognized its true masters. High Commander Zeth Newell found himself trapped aboard a dead ship as his empire collapsed around him. The Eternal Dominion, which had been the terror of the galaxy for so long, was now just a floating piece of metal with no power and no weapons. The proud Valdorian commander who had never known defeat faced the humiliation of total surrender. Ambassador Kethvar attempted to negotiate a ceasefire as council resistance crumbled throughout the capital system. The Valdorian diplomat offered to share power with the rebels, to reform the council's government, to grant limited autonomy to conquered species. But Jake Morrison's response was simple and final. The time for negotiations had passed. The council's complete surrender was the only acceptable outcome. The orbital bombardment of Valdoris Prime lasted only 6 hours. Rebel forces used precise strikes to disable government centers and military installations while avoiding civilian populations. The planet that had been the center of galactic oppression for 10,000 years fell with surprising ease once its stolen technology was turned against it. President Lisa Carter arrived at Valdoris Prime aboard the first diplomatic vessel to land on the conquered capital world. She walked through the council chambers where so many species had been forced to surrender their freedom. The ancient seats of power were empty now, their occupants either dead or imprisoned as war criminals. The most important moment came when representatives from over 200 different species gathered in those same chambers to establish a new form of galactic government. The Galactic Federation would be based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. Every member species would have an equal voice in decisions that affected them. Captain Morrison addressed the assembly as humanity's representative. He spoke about the importance of freedom, the value of diversity, and the strength that came from cooperation between equals. But most importantly, he spoke about the responsibility that came with power. The species that had overthrown the council must never become oppressors themselves. The Builder artificial intelligences revealed themselves to the assembled delegates as the galaxy's new guardians. These ancient computer minds would share their technology freely with all species, but only for peaceful purposes. Any attempt to use Builder weapons for conquest or oppression would result in immediate shutdown of all advanced systems. Dr. Chen established the first Federation Research Council with scientists from every member species working together to understand Builder technology. The discoveries they made in the following months revolutionized galactic civilization. Transportation that could move ships instantly across the galaxy. Medical technology that could cure diseases that had plagued entire species. Most importantly, they found ways to restore worlds that the Council had destroyed during their long reign. Admiral Phillips became the first Supreme Commander of Federation Defense Forces, but her role was very different from High Commander Zeth Null's position. Her job was to protect member species from external threats and help them develop their own defensive capabilities. The Federation military would never be used to conquer or control its own members. The trials of Council war criminals took place on their former capital world under the supervision of judges from every species they had oppressed. High Commander Zeth Null and Ambassador Kethvar were sentenced to life imprisonment for crimes against galactic civilization. But many lower-ranking council officials were given the chance to serve the new Federation in peaceful roles. Tony Blake led the effort to establish Federation engineering standards that would allow all species to share technology safely. The principles he developed emphasized cooperation and mutual benefit, rather than the exploitation that had characterized council rule. Every species would contribute their unique capabilities to benefit the entire galactic community. Jake Morrison made one final voyage to Earth to report the successful completion of humanity's greatest mission. The small blue world that had refused to surrender to impossible odds had become the catalyst for galactic freedom. Children throughout human space would grow up in a universe where every species had the right to determine their own destiny. President Carter reflected on how humanity's greatest weakness, according to the Council, had become their greatest strength. Their refusal to accept authority without question, their chaotic creativity, their determination to fight for freedom even against hopeless odds. These traits had not only saved humanity, but had liberated an entire galaxy from 10,000 years of oppression. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be. The age of forced unity under Council rule had ended. The new age of voluntary cooperation under Federation principles had begun. And at the center of it all was the recognition that freedom was not just humanity's right, but the birthright of every intelligent being in the universe. The stars that had once been ruled by fear and oppression now shone with the light of hope and possibility. The Galactic Council had tried to control humanity and failed. In their failure, they had lost not just their empire, but their vision of what galactic civilization could become. The future belonged to those who chose cooperation over conquest, diversity over uniformity, and freedom over control.